Magic touch.
This report details new opportunities in several markets here.
And we'll be arriving in
20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Yeah, at 200 kilometers, 125 miles per hour for you.
I never would have known. 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Too bad.
Jack-o'-lanterns as works of art. See their glow at 10.
Good evening. I'm Hugh Dow.
And I'm Barbara Walters. And this is 2020.
On the ABC News Magazine, 2020 with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters. Tonight, he grew up in the business, has been entertaining us for nearly 60 years.
Jimmy Stewart. Oh, gee whiz. Now, who can solve this mystery?
Sammy Davis Jr. His image has always been lots of flash.
I enjoyed it. It was fun, but then it becomes an obligation.
Behind it all, a complicated man who broke the rules to fight racism.
At the Sands Hotel, man, they drained the pool. Lena Horne's daughter went into the pool and they drained it.
Bob Brown with a very surprising portrait. The man behind the mask, Sammy. And when you get a prescription drug, do you also get a warning?
Just handed me a white slip of paper.
That's not enough. Side effects range from the devastating.
He goes, that baby can be born without legs, without arms.
To the bizarre.
Last fall, my toenails and fingernails started coming off.
With over 10,000 drugs on the market, Dr. Timothy Johnson reports you should be more cautious than ever. Warning, side effects.
Get up, ma'am. You're hurting my arm.
Abortion clinics under siege, targeted by a new group. Protesters willing to be arrested.
Until we even overwhelm the entire system.
But who are they? How are they organized? John Stossel behind the scenes with them and those they affect. Who are the new crusaders?
The arguments for and against abortion are perhaps the most emotional in our country today. And even though it doesn't seem possible, tomorrow could add still more fuel to both sides. In some 30 cities around the country, protesters are planning acts of civil disobedience to shut down abortion clinics. It is a tactic that has inflamed the passions of many of those who oppose abortion. And the protesters say they'll keep at it until abortion is once again illegal.
They've named their effort Operation Rescue, and it's commanding attention now because it signals a major switch in how they're trying to win support. In the past, the Right to Life movement has usually been associated with a kind of hell and damnation attack against its critics. Well, now it has launched a more disruptive campaign. And tonight, John Stossel looks at the tactics and the strategy behind them.
Millions of Americans consider abortion murder. For the past 15 years, they've campaigned to make abortion illegal again. But they've failed to convince the majority. A recent ABC News Washington Post poll asked people, do you support a constitutional amendment to restrict women's right to have an abortion? Only 34% of the public did. Failing politically, they've tried other tactics. Shooting at the clinics, setting fires at the clinics, bombing clinics. Most in the movement condemn the violence. Instead, many advocate what they call street counseling.
Please don't murder your baby. Please don't murder your baby.
They approach women entering abortion clinics and try to change their minds. Sometimes they yell at them.
They won't tell you about seeing the little children in your dreams, Dad.
Clinics have taken to providing escorts for their patients. Now the movement's trying another tactic. Operation Rescue, they call it. Keep up the counseling, but don't stop there. Block the entrances, lie down in the streets, do whatever it takes to close the clinic. If you're arrested, good. We'll clog the jails, clog the courts, until we win.
Until we even overwhelm the entire system. You know that the system can only hold so many hundred people. The hour will come when they will throw up their hands and say, we can't make any more arrests.
It's not a new technique, non-violent resistance. Gandhi used it to help free India from British rule.
Now move back. I'm giving you 1 minute. You have the steps blocked here, the entrance to the courthouse.
Martin Luther King used the tactic during the civil rights movement. Break local laws, he said, because segregation is the greater evil. Civil disobedience, it's called. Both King and Gandhi say they were inspired by Thoreau, who wrote, "Any man more right than his neighbors constitutes a majority of one. Let your life be a counter-friction to stop the machine." Thoreau, however, might not have approved of the rescuers' tactics because his first principle was government is best, which governs least. King and Gandhi wanted to get rid of government restrictions. The rescuers want more restrictions. Civil disobedience isn't easy for the rescuers either. Most are fundamentalist Christians. They were raised to have an almost pious respect for the law. But in this case, they say biblical obedience is more important.
Been too darn nice. If we're really killing babies in America, let's act like it.
Randall Terry is the unlikely leader of this new movement. He's only 29 years old, a former used car salesman from Binghamton, New York.
Atlanta will make or break the pro-life movement.
He picked Atlanta because it has several thriving abortion clinics and because the Democratic National Convention was held here. During the convention, his rescuers tried to close the clinics, but failed. Terry decided they'd keep trying. Atlanta would be their Selma. Here is where they will make their stand. It's now 2 weeks before October 3rd, the day when they pray that people from all across America will come to Atlanta to be arrested, to clog the courts, and to close the clinics for good. We watched as they prepared for Rescue Day.
Okay, let's go.
First, Terry's assistant takes the people who volunteered to lead the rescue on a scouting trip.
There are 2 doors there.
They visit each clinic and decide which doors to block.
The gift of procreation comes from Almighty God.
1,000 miles away at a fundamentalist church outside Buffalo, rescuers prepare to join them. Dwight and Linda Saunders will make the trip with their children. Dwight says he's willing to be arrested because abortion is sin.
Is it murder? Yes, it is murder. And therefore I have to put myself on the line.
It will be a 19-hour trip.
The scripture says, rescue those that are being led away.
In a few days, it will be Scott Chadzy's 30th birthday. He says he expects to spend it in jail.
Use this time, Lord, to show us what we should do today and tomorrow.
Many rescuers are from the Atlanta area. Evangelist Henry Irby will participate, along with his wife and 2 of their 9 children.
Well, I refer to the aborticide clinics, or the abortion clinics as commonly called, as murder mills.
Why will his son join in?
When God directs me, I have an obligation to obey. If I don't obey, it's sin. And God hates sin. The wages of sin is death.
There will be Atlanta's finest. They're waiting for you.
Later that night, everyone meets in an Atlanta church to be taught strategies for dealing with the police.
If they just stand there, then you go forward, and when you get to about here, you just want to kneel down. Okay, go down. Don't wait that long, man. Now start crawling. Start crawling. Okay, keep crawling.
It's a clever strategy. If you crawl, you certainly don't look violent. And how will the police look if they arrest you? And if they do arrest you, this is what you do.
Now, you may think this looks ungainly.
If you go limp, it takes 3 or 4 people to carry you off.
We have found, actually, for those of you who are interested in Protestant-Catholic comparisons, Catholics tend to be better at going limp. You're down on your hands and knees like this. Come on, stop me.
Randall Terry isn't here to teach this himself because earlier this day, police arrested him for inciting people to break the law. But it doesn't faze him. He's been arrested 25 times before.
Just get Bob Fear involved, see if he can get me out. We had these charges dropped once before.
He posted bond later that night, and by dawn of Rescue Day, he's back in charge.
So go into jail with an open heart before God. Say, God, you know that this
1,000 people have shown up. They meet outside the motel where the out-of-towners stay. The people you've met before are here, and all are certain that their cause is right. No one should have an abortion. ever, for any reason.
Doesn't a woman have a right to decide what she'll do with... No.
No.
On that percentage.
What if the woman were raped?
Statistically speaking, women who are raped don't even conceive because less than 1% of the time, the adrenaline and the chemical balance at that time produces nothing. It prevents a conception.
This is simply not true, but it's what she's been told.
How do you know this is what God wants you to do?
You feel it. You know, God says there's a time, He tells me there's a time when this killing has to stop.
In downtown Atlanta, near the abortion clinics, at 6 in the morning, the police wait and wait. At 10, the rescuers come. As planned, they get down on their knees. The police link arms to try to keep them from getting to the clinic. But the crawling works. People get through the police lines. Now, crossing a police line is breaking the law, so the police begin to make arrests. Again, as planned, the protesters don't cooperate. They go limp.
Get up, ma'am. Don't walk with it, ma'am.
And when you go limp, it's not easy to arrest you, especially if you weigh 200 pounds. Henry Irby is among those arrested.
My father was arrested. Because babies are being murdered.
Scott Chadsey was among those arrested, too. Dwight Saunders was not. He lay down in front of the police line and stayed there all day. His wife stood on the side and cried. Toward afternoon, as other rescuers kept crawling forward, the police got more impatient. Some used pressure points. That gets people to stand up quickly. It also makes the police look brutal on television. The protesters say the police were unnecessarily rough.
Why so rough? Why throw people into trucks?
We had people who assaulted our police lines this morning, and we had to physically remove them. We had to...
Wait, they weren't assaulting your police officers. They were crawling.
I said they assaulted our lines. They charged over the line or under the line. The people would not get up and be arrested, so we chose to drag them.
Sometimes it did appear that demonstrators were crying out for our cameras.
You're hurting my arm!
In fact, watching the demonstration, there were times it seemed some protesters considered it a game.
Even as
Listen to Randall Terry.
we are being successful, we've kept this mill from opening up.
Maxwell Smart.
By day's end, some 400 people were arrested at the 3 clinics that had been targeted for rescues. No one was seriously hurt.
In a perverse way, everybody got what they wanted. The police have kept the clinic open. Women who want to get abortions today can get them. The protesters got exactly the publicity they hoped for.
Anti-abortion protesters.
That night and the next morning, all the major networks carried stories about the protest.
Most major political changes in this country were preceded by social upheaval. And we just did not learn the lessons of American political history.
You've learned it now.
Yes, and there is something happening. We could see a constitutional amendment to make it in and out of the House and go to the states for ratification if this thing keeps up.
How does it feel from the other side?
It was just really terrifying. Men were coming and throwing themselves down at my feet, hollering, "Please, ma'am, don't kill your baby," trying to knock me down and begging and pleading.
This woman says she wants an abortion because she has no money to raise a child.
The father of the child don't want anything to do with it because he's got another girl pregnant also. And, you know, it's all left to me.
This woman says she braved the mob because she was raped.
I have done a good job raising my daughter, and I don't feel that I wouldn't do as good a job raising this child, but I don't want it because it's from rape.
Randall Terry says the reason doesn't matter. No abortion should be allowed.
You would force the woman to carry that baby for 9 months.
We do not kill children for the crimes of their father.
A 12-year-old girl whose pelvis was so small that she might die having a child. A 13-year-old who's raped by her father.
Abortion is a violent, traumatic procedure. It will not undo a rape. It will only compound the trauma that a woman is going through.
This woman says she used to support Terry. Abortion should be illegal.
To me, it was murder.
Then she got pregnant.
I guess I was wrong. I'm 39 years old. I have 3 grown children. What am I going to give a baby? I can't see bringing a baby if I'm not capable of taking care of it.
It's between me and God. It's not between them and God. It's between me and God.
Pro-choice advocates say if the rescuers win, we'll return to the days of the back alley profiteers who ruled before legalization.
Women were dying. Women were maiming themselves. Hysterectomies, lie up their vagina. Carpenters, mechanics, hairdressers were arrested in Georgia for illegal abortions. Women were using coat hangers. They were using turpentine. They were using catheters. Abortions have been done for centuries. The issue is not, are they going to be done or are they not going to be done? The issue is, are they going to be done legally in hospitals or are they going to be done illegally? Because they're going to be done.
And if we want to see what pressure can do, we can look this week in France, where, as you know, a French company developed an abortion pill that was considered safe and effective, and pressure groups made the company take it off the market.
The anti-abortion groups put on so much pressure, the company said, we just don't want anything to do with this. And then just today, after doctors said lives would be saved because this pill is safer than some abortions, the French government today ordered them to produce the pill after all. But certainly the pressure groups have an effect.
And tomorrow is the big pressure here.
Tomorrow is the national rescue. 32 cities are scheduled. In fact, they already began today. 100 people were arrested in Binghamton, New York. Randall Terry was arrested again, but he's been bailed out and will lead the protest tomorrow.
And people can stay in jail how long?
Often they're bailed out the next day. Sometimes they don't give their names, and some have stayed in jail for months.
Thank you, John.
Well, later in the hour, the threat of tragedy in your medicine cabinet. Prescription drugs. There are now so many that a very serious danger is often overlooked. Dr. Timothy Johnson reports warning, side effects. But next, Sammy Davis Jr. as you've never seen him, and as he was a generation ago. Bob Brown reports Sammy right after this.
Hey, let's be honest here. Dressed up potatoes are not all that exciting. So if you want something a little more special, here's the new fall line of savory classics from Rice-A-Roni. Chicken and broccoli Dijon, Mexican fiesta, almond chicken wild rice. Because no matter how you dress up a potato, it's still just a potato. Save a potato. Serve savory classics from Rice-A-Roni.
One solution to the Cold War has been consistently recommended by pharmacists. Brixorol for 12 hours of cold relief, the pharmacist's favorite.
Have you ever noticed how cars mean a little more to some people than they do to others? Nissan has. That's why we build ours the way we do. We understand that a car fulfills a number of human needs. And transportation is only one of them. Nissan, built for the human race.
Tony, what are you eating now? Fruitful Brand?
Yeah, it's peaches and raisins.
Hey, Tony, that looks good.
It is. It's Fruitful Brand. It's apples and dates.
You just said it was peaches and raisins.
Well, it was.
Don't lie to your father.
Well, now it's raisins, apples, and dates.
Didn't you just hear your mother?
Hey, it is apples and dates.
Give me the box, Rosa. I'll decide.
Only Fruitful Brand has so many fruits, you get a different fruitful combination in every bite.
It's peaches, raisins, and dates.
Kellogg's Fruitful Brand. It's never the same bite twice.
Because there are places where you can't get something by just pushing a button, the MCI card can be used from any phone in the U.S., push button or rotary, so you're never out of touch, no matter where your business takes you. The MCI card. It is America's business card.
Tomorrow, meet the guru who kept his girlfriend's body in the closet and the woman who made $1/3 of a million on welfare. Lindsay Wagner hosts Scandals, and it was the cop show. Talk, original, real. And now it's back in all new 2-hour movies. Police Story premieres tomorrow.
30 years ago, he was one of the highest paid performers in Las Vegas. Still is. And his act exploded with energy. It still does. A surprise, though, is what's different about Sammy Davis Jr. His popular image remains synonymous with flash and pizzazz, but Bob Brown discovered a side to Sammy Davis you may never have seen.
If you had to outline your identity, where would you start? Where would it go?
I don't think there's a need to do it anymore. I don't think I have to do that. Not Sammy Davis Jr. Oh, that's a black guy that turned Jewish. Or that's the guy with the one eye. Or that's... I don't think those hooks are there anymore for me. I think I'm judged now, and I may be living in fantasy land, but I think I'm judged now as a performer. Sammy Davis Jr., professional entertainer. That's it.
Well, this is that moment, my once in a lifetime, when I can explore a new and exciting land. For once in my lifetime, I feel like a giant. I soar like an eagle as though I had wings.
One good measure of Sammy Davis Jr. as an entertainer is that his talent has always been larger than the controversies he faced, and some of those were enormous. He was a groundbreaking performer from the beginning.
Please let me do good things.
He was born in Harlem in 1925, the son of a dancer and a chorus girl who separated when he was 2 1/2. His father and uncle took him on the road, and ever since, Sammy Davis Jr. has been a professional entertainer who early on had to break rules just to show off his talent.
Jimmy Stewart. Oh, gee whiz. Now, who can solve this mystery?
For instance, in the early 50s, his uncle told him he shouldn't do these impressions for fear that a black man impersonating white people would alienate the audience.
I don't know why you're always picking on me, boy, because after all, I'm with you and you're with me and we're partners.
But the stars he imitated loved his act.
I was just staggered by the amount of energy and versatility.
Jerry Lewis was one of a number of stars who offered help and professional advice to Sammy. Davis had become the featured performer in the trio that included his father on the left and was named for his uncle, Will Maston, on the right.
I had been brought up by a theatrical father, just as he was, and taught some basic ground rules. So I made a couple of notes about that and told it to him. I told him that he was wearing that plaid jacket that kind of distracted from what he was doing.
And his first note was, get rid of the jacket, you can't follow it. So what do you mean? He says, they start to watch your jacket.
And he had enough grease in his hair to make a downhill. I said, you should get rid of that.
I made a boo-boo.
The thing that I think impressed me so much was that I could see the years and years of experience exploding on that stage. And it mesmerized you.
Like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom when the jungle shadows fall. Like the tick-tock of a stately clock leaning up against the wall. Like the drip, drip, drip of the raindrop when a summer shower is due. A voice within me keeps repeating you.
All right. Maybe on a roll here now.
Davis occupies massive penthouse suites filled with games and gadgets when he performs in Las Vegas, where he's been one of the top-paid entertainers for more than 3 decades. What's different now are the house rules about where he goes after a show. Rules that, when he started, were stacked against him and every other black performer. Vegas of the 50s, black stars who were headliners couldn't share in the glamour they created. They couldn't even stay in the hotels where they worked.
Use your mentality. Wake up to reality.
Night after night, Sammy walked out the kitchen exits and drove to the west side of Las Vegas, the black neighborhoods where he roomed in boarding houses.
Now, the house was very much like this house here. One story. Clean. Immaculate.
Do you remember what your room looked like?
Yeah, it was small. Most of the gamblers had a thing about it. They didn't want black people around them when they were gambling. They didn't want waiters, anything like that. At the Sands Hotel, man, they drained the pool. Lena Horne's daughter went into the pool and they drained it. The woman's starring in the main room at the Copa. And I'm not talking about 31 or 29. I'm talking about this is in the 50s. And you get to a point where you just suddenly say to yourself, enough already. Guys, but don't make, and of course my dad and uncle, God rest their souls, they kept saying, don't do that, don't make no waves, you know, you can't do that.
Oh, hey there, you want that high-flying cloud. Though she won't throw a crumb to you, you think someday she'll come to you. Better forget her.
So Davis used his talent as a weapon, and he aimed it in several directions. He finally refused to perform in clubs where blacks weren't accepted as patrons. He also went heavily into debt gambling when he did help break the color barrier in casinos. The attention he focused on himself became grist for scandal sheets. And movie studios got upset because Davis was frequently photographed with white actresses. Gangster Mickey Cohen once wrote that he was offered money to cause Davis physical harm and angrily refused at a time when Sammy was seeing actress Kim Novak.
Better forget her.
So a certain amount of it was just wanting to break the rules then. Such as?
In other words, in those days, you could have had an affair, if you were black, with any woman in the business, so long as you kept it hidden. What the industry disliked totally was that I wouldn't go for that. I wouldn't hide. And I got sick of hiding, and I was embarrassed by hiding. I dared to break the rules. I dared to go straight ahead. And that's what I found out later that nobody could put up with.
In 1960 came his highly publicized 7-year marriage to actress Mai Britt. But despite his headline-making career, his romances, his loss of an eye in an auto accident, his conversion to Judaism and flirtations with 60s occult movements, his charter membership in Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack, nothing brought him more explosive publicity than a seeming political shift. He had been highly visible at the peak of the civil rights movement, a performer who, through benefits, raised more money for the NAACP than any other star. That image would turn in the early 70s. In 1972, although he remained a Democrat, he supported Richard Nixon for president because, he said, he thought by his involvement that he could help restore valuable social programs.
You aren't going to buy Sammy Davis Jr. by inviting him to the White House. You're going to buy him by doing something for America. And that is what we
Instead, a spontaneous gesture at a political rally brought him heavy fire from some other civil rights leaders who accused him of selling out.
Why do you think people reacted so strongly to the Nixon hug?
Because I disappointed them. I disappointed their preconceived ideas. I was a free spirit liberal. And they didn't want to see, you know. And I can understand it.
Would you take it back if you could?
No, because it wasn't planned. It wasn't something that I sat down and planned. It was a reaction to a moment. And you can't take that back.
Davis will turn 63 in December. Dancer Altaviz Gore, who's been married to him for 18 years, says the Nixon controversy was one of the most troublesome she saw him face. The other was getting past 50.
He didn't like the sound of 50, I don't think. I thought he really felt like he was terribly old. And he wasn't at all. But that's the way he felt. And so he was just, I don't know, rude, nasty.
We got to 50 and I didn't want to get old, you know. He's out, you know, I can't get rid of the jumpsuits and I can't get rid of the gear. I can't, how are they going to accept me, you know, blah, blah, blah.
I think a lot of people remember from that period all the gold, too. The chains and the gold rings. Where did that come from to begin with?
It's these people giving me rings and I keep putting them on, and then it became a show business, again, over theatricality. And it became a thing, and I said, I can get away with this. And people would talk about, hey, let me see your jewelry. Hey, let me see the chain. Let me see the new thing you got. And I enjoyed it. It was fun, but then it becomes an obligation. But all these fingers will remain empty, I'm afraid, for a while.
He once filled his hotel suites with a flow of friends and well-wishers and hangers-on and catered food. Now he often cooks for himself. He is also self-educated in history and science. He reads voraciously, although he never spent a day in school and can't write much more than his name. The cooking, he says, is partially a substitute for the heavy drinking he used to do. To use his analogy, he had to trim the fat in his personal life and with audiences as well.
Instead of just going ahead and segueing into a number, here's one I'd like to do for you. I had to go, you know, many years ago, you know, and just keep going on, and somebody, you could see people now timing it. He's been talking for 2 minutes. When is he going to sing the song, you know? And you fall in love with the sound of your own voice. It's that conductor who's never had a symphony, and he's a brilliant conductor, and he starts to conduct, and he gets fascinated with his hands. He forgets about the musicians. He's watching his hands, and then he realizes I've got control over 80 people, you know. Same thing with the performance, so you get rid of that. You get rid of it. Hey, what it is? Come on, of course you can.
Oh, my God!
Davis says this kind of positive acceptance by other blacks has come back to him now, after a period when it was often visibly obvious to him that he was being shunned.
I have felt for the last 3 years this embracing, and it's there for me.
What's made the difference? Has it been time? Is it something you're doing? Is it?
I think it's also, to be honest with you, I think being married to Alcides for 18 years, you know, they saw us settling down, or terminology I use in the book, he's come home.
The number he's used to end his act for years isn't one of his hits. It's Mr. Bojangles, about an old song and dance man whose time has passed. Davis had his left hip surgically replaced less than 2 years ago, but the moves are still there. And this is a kind of signature number for him.
I knew a man, Bojangles, and he danced for you. In worn-out shoes.
To me, he's a composite of all the black street performers, dancers, all the cats that didn't make it, but had that inner dignity. Always had the frayed cuffs, yes, but they were clean. Always the little hat, the little gesture, you know. And to do the song always takes a little out of me, because for a long time I thought I was going to wind up like the man in the song.
I could swear I heard someone say, please. That was Mr. Bojangles. Call me Mr. Bojangles. Mr. Bojangles, come back and dance, 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 dance. Mr.
Took me a long time to be happy with myself. And suddenly the realization comes to you, you're a lucky cat, and you better be able to deal with that. Doesn't mean that everybody's going to like you. But if you greet a person and you say, this is my talent, I think they'll give you an even up chance to try to entertain them.
Mr. jangles.
You know, Sammy's one of that small group of superstars that just keep going. He has a kind of momentum that he doesn't even have to strive.
Yeah, it's not that he wouldn't like to have a hit record or be on television or do more movies, but the fact is he doesn't need any of those things to fill the arenas. He and Frank Sinatra and Liza Minnelli have been out on tour recently, and they doubled Bruce Springsteen's record grosses in Philadelphia. They set a record at the New Jersey Meadowlands. They set records in Tampa. And they do it without, as he says, without laser shows or big production numbers. They're just upfront entertainers.
That's called talent.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Bob.
Next, your doctor might not tell you, but our doctor will, about the dangers of prescription drugs. Severe side effects are becoming a much more frequent problem. Dr. Timothy Johnson has a warning. Stay with us.
There's no great mystery to satisfying your customers. You build them a quality product, treat them with respect. It's that simple. Satisfaction? Chrysler has the highest customer satisfaction of any American car company. And that's for overall product quality and dealer service. And you know what? That makes it 2 years in a row. Satisfaction is your right. We intend to see that you keep getting it.
If you love cheese, but not cholesterol, here's a natural cheese that's low in cholesterol. Light Naturals from Kraft. Now you can have your cheese and eat it too.
For years, you've seen some commercials where one battery company's toys outlast the other toys. So you may have assumed their battery outlasts even Energizer batteries. Fact is, Energizer was never invited to their playoffs. And today's Energizer won't be invited either. Why? Because no battery lasts longer than Energizer. So now you know. A word to the wise. Energize.
I think it's important that customers challenge us because it's key that I can prove to them that what we offer is the best for their business. If you read an ad that says you're going to save 20 or 30% by going to somebody else, and you call me first, then that's the best reaction I'm looking for. Because then I can show you how you're not going to save 20 to 30%. And if every customer called AT&T before they did anything, we'd have very few customers going to the competition.
Lookalikes can confuse you. Like these slices. Sarah's Kraft Slice tastes better because it's made from 5 ounces of milk, while Tom's imitation slice is mostly oil and water. So look for...
Sarah, is that you?
Kraft Singles.
Prescriptions. We're now getting over 1 billion a year. But are we getting the word about side effects?
I was devastated. Absolutely devastated to think that my doctor would give me these drugs and never warn me about them.
What happened? Could it happen to you? Dr. Timothy Johnson reports. Warning, side effects, when 2020 continues.
ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings has been crisscrossing America, looking at the issues of the 88 vote in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and San Antonio, Texas. Monday, he'll report from San Diego.
This is an Eyewitness News Brief. Here is John Drury.
Good evening. Tonight, results of the exclusive Eyewitness News poll on how the presidential nominees are doing in Illinois, plus a special report on how the candidates are courting the female vote and who's ahead with women. Also tonight, as a young girl remains in a coma following a lawn dart accident, the federal government banned sale of the backyard game. And a sneak peek at the Chicago revival of Hair. Join Mary Ann Childers and me tonight at 10.
Igor, get me some brains.
Illinois Bells of Meritech Pages Plus. Published by Donnelly Directory. Shop here and shop intelligently.
There may be banks that hire as many graduates from the nation's top 10 business schools as we do. Other company rosters may claim as many alumni from the 8 universities of the Ivy League.
Some may even match our collection of MBAs from Chicago's 2 leading programs. But among Chicago business banks, only one can present this report card. The Exchange Banks.
The Old Style Marathon, live Sunday at 9, only on South.
Are you aware that America has a drug problem most people don't know about? It's far more likely to affect you and me than the street drugs we hear so much about. Death, birth defects, very serious illnesses are the result. America's other drug problem is the improper use of prescription drugs. Now, why is this happening? Why are these drugs so often harming instead of healing? Well, we asked ABC News medical editor Dr. Timothy Johnson to investigate.
Prescription drugs are on the U.S. market today. And American doctors write 1.6 billion prescriptions each year.
It might cause, you might have some dizziness with it also, and make sure you take it with food. Do you have any known allergies or anything?
No, not that I know of.
Surveys show that more than half of all people who use prescription drugs don't know how the medications are to be taken or what the side effects are, even for common medications. For example, did you know that birth control pills might not be as effective if you're also taking antibiotics, or that acyclovir, widely used for genital herpes, can make you dizzy and interfere with driving, or that beta blockers like Inderal should never be stopped suddenly because it might affect your heart? Fortunately, most side effects of most drugs are minor, but the growing ignorance about prescription drugs is leading to an increasing number of major problems.
I wasn't aware of what the drug could do to really be alarmed about it. You know, if he had said something.
17-year-old Michelle Cucci says she didn't even know the name of the drug she took, let alone its side effects.
Are you getting me?
5 months ago, the Newton, Massachusetts teenager gave birth to her daughter, Justina, a birth that could have been tragic. That's because Michelle took a drug which gave her baby a 40% chance of being deformed. The drug is Accutane, a miracle drug for people with severe acne. It should never be taken during pregnancy, but Michelle says that she didn't know she was pregnant when she got the prescription. In fact, she and Justina's father, Bobby, didn't know she had a problem until 3 months before the end of her pregnancy. That's when her dermatologist found out she was pregnant.
Well, at that time, my heart went to the pit of my stomach. I said, well, how come you didn't tell me you were pregnant?
He said, you can't have that baby. He goes, that baby can be born without legs, without arms, ears, he's going on, major defects.
Michelle's mother also remembers.
So when this little one was born, we were looking for ears and not for fingers or toes.
What did the doctor tell you about the drug when he gave it to you? What did he say about possible side effects?
Absolutely nothing. No, he just handed me a white slip of paper.
Never said what the name was, never used the word Accutane.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle's doctor, a well-known Massachusetts dermatologist, tells a very different story.
I tell everybody that I'm giving them Accutane, and I tell everybody, and I told Michelle, that the drug causes birth defects. And I told Michelle this drug should not be taken if you're pregnant or sexually active. And Michelle told me that was not a problem. She wasn't sexually active, and that wasn't an issue. Now, I did not have her sign a consent form. I didn't give her any written literature. I simply told her that.
Michelle got no printed information from the pharmacy either when her mother filled the prescription. And the pharmacist didn't say a word about it?
Nothing. I think that's what I'm so upset about, is that after all this happened with Michelle, and I started to research the drug a little bit myself, and had been back and forth on the phone with the dermatologist, he had said to me, well, what about the pamphlet that the pharmacist gave you? I said, what pamphlet? And he said, well, it's his responsibility to give you a pamphlet.
What actually happened in Michelle's case is obviously a matter of dispute. However, there is no dispute about the fact that patients often don't get or understand essential drug information. According to a 1985 study by the Food and Drug Administration, Only 40% of consumers get information about prescription drugs from their doctors, mostly directions for use. Only 19% get information from the pharmacist, again, directions for use. Just 7% ask questions of the physician or druggist. Ultimately, 34% of consumers get no information at all from any source. Dr. Sidney Wolfe heads the Public Citizen Health and Research Group, an organization which backed a plan, defeated by Congress, to require package inserts for all prescription drugs.
Everyone said who opposed it, doctors, pharmacists, drug companies, that it would, quote, interfere with the doctor-patient relationship. They were only half right, because it would only interfere with the doctor-patient relationship if the doctor hadn't previously told you that information. If the doctor was up, as many pharmacists are, for helping patients use drugs more safely, it would be no interference at all. It would be a supplement.
However, even if package inserts were required for every prescription, the big question would remain, what do you put on the package inserts? This big book is called the PDR, or Physician's Desk Reference. It's kind of the Bible of drug information. And I just let it fall open, and it came to the drug Benadryl, widely used for allergic-type reactions. As with most drugs in this book, when you read through the description, there is a long list of possible adverse reactions. In the case of Benadryl, including such things as palpitations, hemolytic anemias, agranulocytosis, etc., etc. But the truth is that most of the time, for most of the drugs, these reactions do not occur. Therefore, to have patients read through all of these possible reactions for every drug they get might produce unnecessary worry. And for physicians to have to read through the list for every patient doesn't make a whole lot of sense, cost-wise or time-wise. Instead, experts say we have to use our judgment as to which side effects are worth talking about to a given patient.
I was devastated, absolutely devastated to think that my doctor would give me these drugs and never warn me about them.
Professional judgment is precisely the issue with Mrs. Linda Newell. Mrs. Newell and her husband Jack own a motel in the small town of Fairplay. It's 2 hours from Denver, tucked into the Colorado mountains. Recently, the Newells put the motel on the market because of Mrs. Newell's health problems. Mrs. Newell's doctor prescribed the anti-estrogen drugs Danazol and later Norlutate, both to help her with symptoms of endometriosis. She took the drugs for 10 years. She says she never knew that she should take Danazol for no longer than 6 to 9 months, or that the drugs could cause side effects like weight gain, depression, and nail loss.
Last fall, my toenails and fingernails started coming off, and I went to a dermatologist. And prior to that, I'd had a lot of health problems, but I didn't relate them to either of these drugs.
Mrs. Newell eventually wrote her physician, Dr. Tibor Engel, to ask why he didn't tell her about the side effects. When Dr. Engel replied, he stated that, quote, she should have been told.
The physician wrote back to me and told me that doctors do not always, and particularly he, did not always warn his patients of side effects and adverse reactions of drugs, and that they weren't as careful in their warnings as they should be.
Dr. Engel, whose office is here at Denver's Rose Medical Center, declined to speak with 2020 on the advice of his attorney because Linda Newell has decided to sue. Meanwhile, Mrs. Newell has begun a one-woman campaign to make the FDA responsive to her concerns.
I've spoken with 48 people at FDA. I have 125 pages of correspondence with FDA. I had been told by FDA that there hadn't been enough complaints made against these drugs for them to actually do anything or take any action about changing the label or informing the patient. So I sent off for this Freedom of Information, and it cost $55 for a computer printout. And they sent it to me, and in fact, there are many, many complaints about these drugs.
FDA Commissioner Dr. Frank Young says consumers have to accept some responsibility for their own safety.
The American people need to know that there will always be a risk to every medicine that you take. We cannot, by even very careful pre-market approval, looking at 2,000 to 5,000 people, pick up an event that's going to come 1 in 10,000. We just won't see it.
While Dr. Young is sympathetic to cases like Mrs. Newell's, he says more information on either labels or package inserts isn't necessarily the answer. But he does support the select use of see-through blister packaging that forces patients to notice warnings.
We don't think it should be done with all medicines because then people will just get blasé about it. After all, on over-the-counter medicines, few people read the labels. But where there are substantial risks, I like to see as much information given to the patient so they can understand it.
But evidence has shown that nothing, not even special stickers or patient package inserts, works as well as good old-fashioned talk between doctor and patient.
The beta blocker that we talked about.
Right.
Here are some questions that the National Council on Patient Information and Education suggests all patients ask. 1. What is the name of the drug and what is it supposed to do? 2. How and when do I take it and for how long? 3. What foods, drinks, other medicines, or activities should I avoid while taking this drug? 4. Are there any side effects and what do I do if they occur? And finally, number 5. Is there any written information available about the drug? Some pharmacies have begun to help consumers answer a few of those questions. At the 45-store King Soopers chain in Colorado, consumers get special printed information with each prescription, condensed in an understandable form.
I had an experience taking one type of medicine with which I couldn't take any aspirin products. I wasn't told about it, but it appeared on here, and I was very grateful.
But this kind of system is still unavailable to most consumers. So for now, patients will have to research the drugs either through the physician's desk reference or by using the wide variety of books on the market today. Every time Michelle looks at her baby Justina, she is reminded about the importance of doing research on medication. It'll be some time before doctors know whether Justina suffers developmental damage because of Accutane.
Take a listen to her heart.
Pediatrician Dr. John Dubey is cautiously optimistic.
I think that overall she looks very good. I agree with you that I would expect her to have a little better head control at this point in time than she does. And I'd like to see her fixing and following a little more accurately than she is right now.
Michelle wants other people to learn from her experience.
There has to be, you don't even have to call it counseling, but there has to be something between the patient and doctor.
Linda Newell says patients can't depend on the system to work. Her advice is simple. Assume the worst.
It seems that most of the people that take the medicine trust FDA, and they trust the drug companies, and they trust the pharmacy, and they trust the doctor, and they can actually trust no one.
I have a gripe with you, but first of all, Tim, did the Accutane people give enough warning?
It's a matter of debate as to whether it was enough, but certainly right from the start they did warn about this danger during pregnancy. They've made the warnings much stronger now after the latest round of controversy, but to give them their due, they did warn right from the start.
Okay, my gripe. You said a doctor can't sit there and go through all the pages, you know, and do all of the things about side effects, but certainly they can tell patients the most important side effects. You could even Xerox that page and give it to them. I don't think that's an excuse.
You're right. We should talk about the most important side effects, and that's what we do try to do. The question is, how do you cover all of them, the very rare ones? I'm all, quite frankly, for giving them the page or some printed page of full information.
That helps.
Whether they will read it and absorb it is quite another question, but I've come to the conclusion we should give them all the information for those who want it and will read it.
Okay, and then it's up to us.
Then it's up to us.
Okay. Thank you. I don't always have gripes, just now and then. Next, when we come back, a record fine. Who has to pay it? Don't go away.
Guy came by today trying to sell me some imitation body parts. Copycat hoods, doors, and fenders for GM cars. And I wasn't buying. You see, I know some of those imitations don't come up to GM specs for fit, finish, and corrosion protection. How do you protect yourself? Ask to see a repair order before insurance work begins. And insist on genuine General Motors parts. Remember, it's your car, and it's your choice.
You can have AT&T without spending a lot of money, and you can have the best quality in the world. So it makes for a smart business decision to come back and look. No reason in the world someone can't call and say, I want you to look at this bill because I want to make sure I'm getting the very best value. And that's part of the service we offer. We're not afraid to stand up to that. We clearly have competitive prices. Just come and look. Compare. You've got to look at what we have to offer.
I never thought I'd like it. Then one time I used Coffee Mate instead of milk. Turned out to be all they say it is. You know, it makes coffee taste creamy, rich, the whole bit.
Coffee Mate from Carnation. Don't doubt it. Try it.
Nobody has a taste like Friskies. Nobody has a flavor like Friskies. Nobody brings out the Frisky in your cat like the double-coated flavor of Friskies. Nobody, just Frisky.
The heartland pours it on real tall.
that kick. The Deep South says, come on, y'all. Health kick milks that kick. The East Coast drinks milk at work and at play. The high country's drinking milk every day. In the USA, there's just one thing to say. America's favorite health kick milk.
George Siegel, one hardened detective who stumbled onto an extraordinary body of evidence.
Tell me they have that in the life to come, and I'll build a church with my bare hands.
It's Murphy's Law, Wednesday.
I gotta get out of this racket.
World War II. America in her finest hour. Now, a motion picture experience you'll never forget. Herman Woukes, War and Remembrance, starting November 13th.
There was a major news story today concerning job safety. And for our regular viewers, it may have rung a bell. It may have reminded them of Tom Jarrell's report, The Most Dangerous Job in America, which told of serious and escalating safety problems in the meat packing industry. One example was the situation at this John Morrell plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Workers there said that because of speeded up production lines, they are suffering crippling injuries. Now, these cuts were made not by a worker's knife, but by a surgeon trying to relieve the symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome. This is caused by repeating hand-wrist movements and reduces muscle strength to that of a child. Well, today, citing precisely that kind of injury, John Morrell was fined $4.3 million by OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It was the largest fine OSHA has ever levied against a single company. It said that John Morrell had ignored the risk to its workers. And for its part, the company responded that it was being singled out unfairly and it may seek an injunction. Well, on Nightline tonight, Morton Dean is sitting in for Ted Koppel. And Mort, what do you have for us?
Barbara, our focus tonight is the nuclear disaster we failed to prepare for. How unsafe are America's nuclear weapons plants, and is national security threatened? Hugh?
That's Nightline after your local news. And now that's 2020 for tonight. We thank you for joining us.
And remember, we're in touch, so you be in touch. I'm Barbara Walters.
And I'm Hugh Down.
And for all of us here on 2020, good night.
What does the 1 minute rate comparison mean to you as a company? There aren't too many people I know that speak for exactly 60 seconds and hang up. The real question is, how do you compare in the volume of calls that I have to make to the locations that I have to make for the amount of time and the time of day? And AT&T, when you consider the volumes, the locations, and the true talking time, AT&T is extremely competitive. That's why I have clients coming back.
One day in the not-too-distant future, given the daily advancement of technology, imaginative engineers, and, of course, hard work, it is conceivable that somebody could make a car as good as the Honda Accord four-door sedan. Anything's possible.
UCLA's Troy Aikman, Washington State's Tim Rosenbaugh. Two of the nation's top quarterbacks meet in a Pac-10 showdown. The Cougars challenge the #1 ranked UCLA Bruins. Or it's Big Ten action when Iowa tackles the Fightin' Hoosiers of Indiana on ABC's College Football Saturday.
Transcript of this program, please send $4 to 2020 Transcripts, Journal Graphics, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. This is 2020.
This has been a presentation of ABC News, where more Americans get their news than from any other source.
This is ABC.
I'm Marianne Childers, and Eyewitness News at 10 is next. Tonight, results of our exclusive poll showing that George Bush is putting some distance between himself and Michael Dukakis among Illinois voters. Also, a judge has sent a 4-year-old girl back to the mother who served prison time for abusing her.
Escalon pedigree and the most successful pedigree.